Okay, everyone, you're all very welcome to the Policy and Resources Committee on Wednesday, the 11th of May, 2022. And I'm speaking to you from the Grange at 7 p.m. here in Omagh. And members are both in the chamber and on WebEx. Tonight, members, as I have been doing before, I will alternate between the chamber and indeed WebEx. I will not be muting any mics on WebEx, but standing orders will apply throughout. For your information, there is one item of any other business which we'll deal with in the normal flow of the agenda. So the first thing on the agenda is item 1, and that is apologies. Now, I already have apologies forwarded from Councillor Armstrong, Swift, Dehan, and not excluding the Chief Executive, Alison herself. So I'll now go around the group leaders, and the first one is Councillor Maguire.
Gormagat Kearney, thank you, Chair. I have none to report from the Sinn Féin group. And Gormagat.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. The next one I'll call on Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair Howard. Councillor Alex Baird. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. And the next one is Councillor Paul Robinson.
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And Councillor Mary Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, Howard. Late apology from Councillor John Coyle, who have to just be late on. Everyone else should be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And with regard to the single member parties or independents, I've already mentioned Councillor Swift and Councillor Dehan. Is there any other further apologies? Councillor Gannon, are you looking in?
Yes, Chair, apologies. Just myself and Paul Blake are in a room together here, so we're just signed in on the one device, but if we need to at a later point, we'll sign in on the two, but just let you know he is in attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey, are you trying to initiate the mic? Could I ask IT to have a quick look at to see if there's an issue? Members, you've just had patience here. There's a little problem with the mics here. Could you now try, Councillor O'Coffey? Oh, it's the one beside him. Can you change that, or are we going to get? No, sorry, it was easy to change. Okay, I'd like to keep them apart if I can. But, okay. Sorry about that, members. We're getting mics sorted out here. Councillor Coffey, if you press your button, if you're looking to come in.
No, it was only to say that my mic wasn't working. So.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Cllr.
Yes, Chair, I think the mic's working over here. Yeah, just to make apologies for Councillor Keenan. I think he's again stuck on work, but I think he's hoping to join at some stage later in the meeting.
Thank you, Emmett. Right, I think that's our full apologies there, which is item 1. Item 2 is to sign the minutes and confidential minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of April 2022. And I've signed both of those prior to the meeting here. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting? Councillor Adam Gannon, you have your hand up. Councillor Gannon? Councillor Gannon, if you wish, you can come in at a later stage, but I'm not hearing anything from you. Councillor O'Coffey?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have a declaration in regard to staff matters in relation to the Unite industrial dispute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so that item dealt with declarations of interest. If there is something comes up, please identify it and let me know prior to getting involved. The next item is item 4, matters arising. And we'll go through the minutes page by page. Page 1, page 2. I think, Celine, you may have something there, 4.2.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, matters arising in relation to item 4.2 and the correspondence that's attached then from the Western Health and Social Care Trust, which apologises for the cancellation of the meeting, which they say was in line with the action taken by other health trusts, and then refers to another informal meeting that has been held, and that arrangements are being made for the next health and social care meeting. So that's really just for noting.
Okay, for noting, can I have a proposer, the seconder to note? Councillor Robinson proposes and Councillor Thompson is seconding. Okay, members, that's okay. Sorry, Councillor Coffey. Want to get this mouse sorted out? Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just if I could ask the Director through yourself in regard to the informal meeting that was held yesterday, or was it the day before yesterday, with the Health and Social Care Subcommittee. There was the matters before that were the review of surgical services and the staffing situation impacting on neonatal. Is there any information going to be forwarded on to the wider council in relation to these matters? Because obviously they're of considerable concern. And I do note that there's now a wider consultation has been launched around emergency and care services by the board itself, and that this takes the form of a virtual consultation exercise only, which is quite concerning considering the potential impact that will have if it was to proceed in the way which we hope it would not. And I'm just wondering whether that was raised at that meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coffey. I wasn't present, but I can ask Celine if she was present, if she can clarify those issues, please.
Chair, I wasn't present at that meeting. I do have just a verbal update from the Chief Executive in connection with that meeting. So Councillor Coffey is correct, and I understand he has been in communication with Alison in relation to that. The items that he's mentioned there, the emergency surgery and the neonatal facilities, were referenced by those in attendance, and it was advised that both will be included on the agenda for the next formal meeting, which obviously we want to expedite as soon as possible. So
Okay.
I assume that where there is specific information, the Chief Executive will provide that, but it will be formally on the agenda of the Health and Social Care Working Group meeting.
Okay, I know you're not happy, Councillor Coffey, but that's as good as an update as we can probably give at this stage. So I'm continuing page 2. Page 3, I think some correspondence there for 4.4, Celine.
Yes, Chair. If I can refer members to item 7.2, which in the other correspondence, an item that was added just in the last day or so. It relates to 4.4 under matters arising in these minutes, which is in connection with the St. Bridget's Day bank holiday request. It's a short response from Paul Scully MP in relation to our further correspondence. And I suppose I would note that still in relation to that item, we would await a response from the Shared Island Unit and also other councils. So that may be an appropriate point for any further discussion on the matter.
I am not seeing any speakers on this. Can I have a proposer to note? Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair, I'll note that. I think it's the response from the Tory ministers is helpful as ever. I suppose it's, as the director rightly says there, it's up to us to try and progress this issue as a devolved matter, as obviously Westminster has kind of repeatedly now exposed its ignorance to the importance and the significance of this very important date locally. So happy enough to note just the correspondence. And
Okay, so you're proposing to note. Thank you. And Councillor Curry, Siobhan Curry.
Yeah, second to note, Chair Gurmagad.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. So you've heard it proposed, seconded, we note. Any objections to that? Okay, it's passed. So we'll continue page 3. Page 4.
Chair, item 5.2. There is a correspondence from the Department of Education, which is provided to members at 4.2 to the agenda. The matters arising here, and that is in connection with Gilligooly Primary School and the proposal to transform to controlled integrated status. It advises that the proposal has not yet been published, but when it is, that it would welcome the council's views on that. So that again is for noting.
Okay, members. The first speaker here we have is Councillor Cllr.
Thanks again, Chair. Yeah, just looking at the correspondence, I'm happy enough to propose to note it again. I think that it notes within the correspondence that Fermanagh Omagh District Council may wish to present the council views on Gilligooly Primary School's proposed transformation to controlled integrated status to the department. In the event that the proposal is brought forward and published, I would propose that the council indeed does do that and request that the department keeps us updated on and included in the process. So I'm happy enough to do that, and if we need to chase up with the department, I'm happy enough to make that as a proposal.
Okay, thank you. We have it proposed now over
Yes,
to
sure.
WebEx and Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would be more than happy to second that proposal, because I think that ultimately, I mean, it makes sense, and it's certainly the direction that the local community wants to go in. And I think that with the passage recently of the Integrated Education Act, and indeed with the recent moves that we've seen in Sion Mills in a very similar direction, I think that integrated education really is providing a viable way forward in terms of providing sustainable education services in rural communities. So very much happy to support going back to the department whenever we have a proposal on the table to offer our support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Next on WebEx is Councillor Alan Rainey.
Also to support that, Chairman.
That's lovely, thank you, Alan. And Councillor Matthew Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just also to add my supportive comments. This council's already played a role in helping Gilligooly Primary School, and it's great to see that there is an appetite to continue to do so. Just as a bit of housekeeping, I suppose I don't believe Councillor Donnelly seconded to note the correspondence. So if that wasn't done, I'll happily second that as well. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I think he did actually, but maybe he didn't send the words, but we'll have it covered by yourself.
Sorry, Chair. I think he seconded the Councillor Cllr's proposal.
Okay. Okay, well then that's it seconded now. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, this is an ongoing situation, so I know my party colleagues were involved in the initial phases of this, as well as attending the meeting in Stormont with the Minister McElveen at that stage. So I was going to second the noting, but that's already been done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Members, you've heard proposed and seconded, not only the noting, but obviously taking up the offer when it's available. Anybody in disagreement with that? Okay, that's passed. Thank you. And we'll carry on with, that was page 4. So we're on to page 5. And again, I think, Celine, is there someone here?
No, Chair. The next
Sorry,
item
that is page 5. Sorry.
on page 9.
Page 6. And page 7. Page 8. And page 9. Celine.
Chair, yes, item 8.3. There's correspondence numbered 4.3 in matters arising, and that is from the Commissioner for Children and Young People, which is noting the issues that have been raised with the Department of Education about transmission of the Omicron variant and associated matters, and making no significant comment, noting our complaint as the complaint issue has been made in that respect.
Okay, members, you've heard the Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair. Again, happy enough to note the correspondence. It's interesting to read through it because I think it does seemingly, by and large, the short response that has been received reflect what we're trying to achieve as a council. And a note with interest just included within the letter, there was a link to the report that the Commissioner had actually done up, a new and better normal. And I think there's some very important and very worthwhile recommendations noted in that. I had a read through just the summary this week of that report. It's, I think, 30 odd pages, but the number of recommendations listed in that, there's about 7 in total that are very worthwhile. And I think they're being brought to obviously to the executive, to the Department of Education, to try and progress and fight for, I suppose, children's rights in relation to working back the other side of the pandemic. So I would like to actually propose that we as a council support the recommendations as listed within the new and better normal report that she has sent, the attachment there, and actually that we follow up with the executive, try and get them, whoever's going to be sitting up on the hill, or whether there'll be anybody there, that we try and progress that, because again, it's a hugely important issue. Children have suffered gravely at the hands of the pandemic, and as noted in the report, prior to that, things weren't great to begin with. So I think it's something that we should be getting behind as a council. So I'd like to propose that we do that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAleer. I'm looking for a seconder here. Councillor Robinson, you're quite happy to note and also follow through with that proposal. Thank you very much.
Chair, if I may just say in relation to that specific document, perhaps it's one that officers could review and then just bring a summary of as part of our consultation report to a future meeting, just for information. It would again help with just to have a clear understanding on the position that we're outlining.
Okay, Councillor McAleer, your proposal, you're quite happy with that? Okay, you're agreeing. And Councillor Robinson. Okay, members, any disagreement to the proposals to note on that further? Okay, that's passed. I have notification Padrigan Kelly, I think, is with. Got her in now. Okay. So we'll finish off on page 9 and page 10. Okay, members, that's the matters arising. We now will go into reports for decision, item 5, and that's corporate services and governance directorate reports. 5.1 to consider report on consultations, and that's paper A. With regard to this, members, 5.1, you will notice that there is one consultation paper. I think we're on our 3rd draft with it, so there has been some submissions from members. So with regard to that, I'm going to ask Louise Horner to actually go through the first part, which is really the consultation on the reform of adult social care in Northern Ireland, and then we'll look at the noting of others later. Okay. So Louise, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah. So this is the draft response to the consultation on the reform of adult social care in Northern Ireland, and this is set out at Appendix 1. A summary of the Council's responses at 2.1 follows the structure of the consultation based around the 6 strategic priorities identified in the consultation report. Our response includes comment on the general challenges facing provision of care and I think it's worth noting that this report follows the Power to People report, which was published in 2017. The second area we've concentrated on is the more efficient use of resources. Third area is valuing carers. Fourth area is better pay and conditions for social care workforce. Making the system less complex and considering other challenges such as the ageing population and cost of living crisis, etc. It's also worth noting that the issue of charging and funding generally is not fleshed out in this consultation paper, and we note that that is disappointing to see. This will be consulted on at a later date, so that we will most certainly put a response to that. This response has been drafted further to soundings with other officers and councillors, managers of care homes, social care workers, Age NI, access and inclusion members, and we also attended a Department of Health Age NI briefing. So hopefully this reflects the council's position and that members approve this draft response for submission, and that is at recommendation 9.1.
Thank you. First speaker is Councillor O'Coppy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation of that paper. And I also want to thank the officers for including the minor suggestions that I brought forward. This is a very important issue. There's a real crisis, as we all know, in our care sector in general, whether it's paid or unpaid. And this is largely related to the lack of pay and conditions, poor pay and conditions associated, but also even the lack of support given to unpaid carers, genuinely exploitative relations. And I think that this is reflected in this document. I note in particular the highlighting of the fact that many of the workers in the sector are women, and that this is part of the undervaluing in general of women's labour in our society and in our economy. That's not an accident, of course, but I think it's important that we as a council identify that. The one thing I would note is that while the paper to which we are responding was generated through co-production involving and including contact and consultation with the trade unions representing the workers, they aren't actually listed as a group that we ourselves consulted. So that's something I would like to see, if possible, in the future, that responsive trade unions or the unions holding recognition agreements in relative in the sector, in the relevant sector, are the ones which we would engage with. So I'm happy to propose this document. I think it's a strong response, and it identifies a lot of the main constraints that are affecting supply of workers in this sector, which is absolutely critical and is having such a detrimental impact on our wider health services in general because of the consequences of the understaffing of care. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next on the list here is Councillor Withers. Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to echo those comments from Councillor Kofi about the work that was done by the officers to bring this together. I know there was considerable work done to date. My earlier comments there. I would, however, just make them suggest some amendments on their minor, just to be more specific by ways of the valued workforce aspect to it. So the first one is I'd like to see a fuel cost allowance included in that, so an uplift to that, if that could be amended to be in line with other public sector workers. I know that domiciliary care workers in particular are under severe pressure at the moment with the cost of living crisis, the rise in fuel costs. So if that could be added to it, I'd say specifically to in line with other public sector workers. And then the second aspect to it is I know that there's a reference to the national living wage in the Reform Social Care document. And if that could also be added to it, I know we've mentioned about improving paying conditions, but I think a specific mention to the national living wage may be worthwhile there as well. So
what page is that on? Sorry, I've identified.
That is on. It's under strategic priority 2, page 3 and page 4. It's covered there. So
Have you some knowledge there, Louise, of what it refers to? Sorry, I'll come back to you, Councillor Withers.
Okay.
If if it suits, I think we can certainly include references to both the minimum wage and the national living wage, and that an additional fact that the average pay for a care worker in Northern Ireland is £10.86 compared to the national minimum wage, which is £9.50. So I would certainly be able to. We can certainly add some more data around that.
You know where that.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Withers, carry on.
Yeah, and obviously the fuel cost allowance is the other aspect to that. The VAT can be included because that's a major impact, especially for those in the private sector at the minute, domiciliary care workers. So that's all to do with the consultation, really. One or other aspect, I'd like to propose something separate to that.
I'll come back to you because
okay.
You've seconded and then you've made amendments. I need to go back to the initial proposer to see if those are agreeable. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sympathetic to what is being proposed, making it more specific, and I certainly would have requested that. But I'm not convinced that we should be referencing the national living wage. That's a Tory construct, and it's actually below the rate, as has just been explained by the officer there, on average, that workers in the sector are being paid. What we need to see is actual proper increases way above what they're employed at. Certainly around £12 an hour is what most people are talking about. That's way above any.
So if it's to be changed,
I wouldn't agree with that, but the other bits, no problem. Thank you.
I'm back to Councillor Withers. Do you accept what Councillor O'Coffey has stated as a seconder?
Yeah, I can accept that, Howard. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we have now a agreement on that proposal on a seconder. I'm now looking, Councillor Withers, if you could put your hand down, please. Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald is the next in the line.
Yes, thanks, Chair, for letting me in, and I want to thank the officers for coming back and forwardness. It's a good consultation response, and I feel that, and I suppose with everybody in the chamber and in support of all domiciliary care workers, carers out in the community, is that they've been undervalued for too long, and whilst their response is strong, there's never a response that can just detect the strength of feeling, within ourselves in the community and people whose family loved ones is actually being cared for. Hugely undervalued. It's been said time and time and time again, but I think we're at the right stage of getting this sorted out, bringing it much further, and also on Patrick Withers for his suggestion there about the fuel mileage. It is grossly underfunded, underpaid, and lots of carers out there hugely struggling, lots of workers out there, and people just don't have the money, and so yeah, supporting everything else. Thank you.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Hey, members have no other, sorry, Councillor Warrington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, just obviously to agree with most of what's been said. Obviously, the big thing is the carers out in the community, which is employed by the private companies. There's a major problem with travel, and obviously with the rural areas that we live in, especially in areas like rural Fermanagh and Tyrone. There's certainly a lot of travel between patients. So just want to agree with everything that's been said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask Anne-Marie and Victor to take down their hands, please, before I go to a vote? Thank you. Members, you've heard it proposed and seconded. That's by Councillor O'Coffey and seconded by Councillor Withers, that we accept the consultation document as provided with the slight amendments as has been agreed. Anybody against that, please indicate now. Okay, that's passed. Thank you. We go back now to the second recommendation, please. Louise.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the other issues provided for information relate to the two consultations which were submitted further to April's Policy and Resources Committee. which were the investment strategy and the Education Authority's strategic plan and special education area plan. And that the council notes forthcoming consultations on the urgent and emergency care consultation, which is the Department of Health consultation, which we will prepare a response for members for the Policy and Resources Committee in June. And there's a number of consultations on traffic calming measures in Edinburgh. And this is recommended at 9.2 that the council notes these for information.
So we're looking for these to be noted. Councillor Coffey?
Chair, I'm happy to propose to note, in relation to the consultation on review of urgent and emergency care services in Northern Ireland by the department, this is the consultation I referenced earlier on. I would like to propose that we as a council would write to the department to question why it is that there are no physical meetings for this consultation. Now, I understand we're in COVID situation. The reality is our A&E services are absolutely filled to the gills with people at the minute. And if there is any suggestion that we may have a review of our emergency care, and certainly the wording that I've seen in relation to this suggests that we have every reason to be concerned around it. I think it should be at least some way in which the public can actually engage directly in the process. So I'd like to propose that we would write to the department to request that they organise at least some possibility of physical meetings in appropriate settings. Maybe they have to be ticketed or whatever, but there has to be some form of engagement, because I think we as a community need to make our voice extremely strongly heard on this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so you're not willing to leave it until the papers going forward. You want that separately, okay? The next one is Councillor Thompson.
Thank you again, Chair, and I'm happy to second the noting of that. Maybe Councillor Coffey's a wee bit premature in his comments with regard to the public meetings, but at the same time, I'm happy to second that also. So happy to second the noting and his proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've been advised that I promised that I would come back to Councillor Withers about a further proposal on adult health and care, which I'm sorry I didn't pick up. So we'll deal with this issue fully and then we'll go back to that. Councillor McAleer?
Yes, Chair. Just a quick point on the topic that we're discussing at the minute. The closing date is noted as the 15th of June. That's actually the date that P&R will be meeting the next time around. So I think it makes perfect sense that we do implement or send out a request to meet in person prior to waiting to a report back or waiting the next time. So I'm happy enough to support fully Councillor Coffey's proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, you've heard it proposed and seconded from Councillor Coffey, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Anybody in disagreement with that? Okay, that's passed. I'll go back now to Councillor Withers. I'm sorry if I have neglected a proposal from you, but we'll go back to it, please. Councillor Withers.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the other one, it still relates to the social care sector, and it's to do with basically the adult daycare centres and respite services within the Western Trust. So it appears that there's still major issues in terms of they haven't come back to capacity that they were at previously before the pandemic. So I would like to propose that we would write to the Western Trust to ask them basically what way the provision currently is in terms of where it lies now and to where it was before the pandemic, and what the pathway is laid out for them to return to full services in terms of that's the daycare centres and also the respite services they're offering to carers in terms of short breaks. So that's the proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, apologies for not including that in the first place, but we'll now look for a seconder. I've Anne-Marie Fitzgerald.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I want to come in and second that there. Yes, I know Patrick has been undid it, and as a few other of us with different members of families not there, just so you know what, it's another one of work that has been pulled back due to the close contact with clients and families and that. So should be fully reinstated back to where it originally was. So yeah, I want to second Patrick's proposal for them forward. Great proposal,
Okay.
Patrick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Members, you've heard it proposed and seconded. Anybody disagreeing, please indicate now. And Anne-Marie, could you take your hand down, please? Okay, that's passed. Okay, I think that's that paper concluded with. Yeah, okay. We now move on to 5.2 to consider update report on equality related matters, paper B. And again, there's two sets of recommendations here. So I'm going to ask them to be divided, please, Louise, because I'll deal with the disability issues as a second matter.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is item 5.2. Chair's already said that there are a number of items related to attachments to this agenda item, and we'll take the Equality Action Plan, which is Appendix 3, first. So the draft Equality Action Plan was presented to members at committee in December, and further to this, it was agreed that it would be put out to 12-week consultation, which closed on the 4th of April. We received 6 responses. A summary of responses is at Appendix 1. The comments, the majority of comments reinforced the plans and strengthened the support for the actions. Comments focused on the need for greater staff, increased emphasis on staff training on gender and LGBTQ+ issues, that all Section 75 groups need to be consulted on, and this feeds into a year-long programme of focus on consultation and engagement, which we'll be undertaking. That members are also to receive training in these areas, and that the process of consultation itself is more effectively monitored and inclusive, reaching hard to reach Section 75 groups. So approval is sought for this final draft, final plan.
Okay, thank you. And members of this, we're dealing with Appendix 1, 2, and 3 this time. Speaker, Sir Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would be. Oh.
Sorry, Councillor Donnelly, could you? We're cut there.
Am I still on, Chair? Apologies.
You are now, yes. Go on ahead, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, sir. There's something going on with my system here. But no, just in terms of the recommendations, insofar as they apply to the Equality Action Plan, I would be more than happy to support and to propose. But I suppose just to touch on that point that was actually raised at the end of those remarks, just in terms of theme B around accessible services, I suppose that there is going to be an additional degree of consultation with respect to the LGBTQ+ community regarding the development of a guide or protocol for gender identity, as well as other matters. And I suppose one of the things that I am very conscious of is that there's been a significant amount of good work done on the ground in recent years to develop positive and supportive infrastructure and networks within the district to be able to support members of the LGBTQ+ community. But even so, with that good work, it would not be as advanced or evolved as the infrastructure in place in urban environments such as Belfast. And we even have that greater degree of rurality, which provides barriers in terms of people being able to access those networks. And I suppose I would just seek some additional reassurance that just as part of that consultation process, that we do make sure that nobody is overlooked, that those groups and those individuals who do have that lived experience to be able to inform what it is that we're doing, that they are engaged with, and we do benefit from that knowledge as part of this process going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now move to the chamber and Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy enough to note the the reports as presented.
This is the second? Yeah.
Second. I think just as was alluded to at the start of the presentation, it is very disappointing that the number of responses I think is so low. So that's obviously something that as a council we really need to look at. There's questions that need to be asked internally, I suppose, whether there are any particular barriers to people respond to that. And not only that, but again, we've raised this issue with the Stormont Executive and the Assembly before, the idea of having a number of different consultations out at one time. And I suppose it's very important just because people are, very easily people can feel disengaged and disconnected from politics and from the council. And they believe that their views don't count or won't be considered. So I think it's just very important that we do try and figure out how we can best get people involved. I would welcome the resolutions and the plans being made. I think noted within the report says the ranging in detail from specific legislation and training on legislation to etiquette training. I think that is hugely important in day-to-day work for elected reps and also for front-facing staff. So I think that is hugely important. And I would again just like to thank those members who did, or the representatives in the different groups and the individuals who did take time to respond for their input and guidance, whether it's from the Disability Advisory Group or other areas that have got involved and come back to us to tell us what they want us to do. So I think that's hugely important. Just in relation to, I think you, Chair, in your summation, you were saying that this included Appendix 2. It's a wee typo just on page 6 and the change in places provision. The purple section where it says, I think it should read proactive, just there's I think a slight typo there. But I'm not sure if we're dealing with the change in places aspect at the minute because it was mentioned in Appendix 2 there.
Okay.
Just very briefly on that, it's raised in, I suppose, a section of its own, and obviously it's something that is hugely important, and it's something that reps across the board are being contacted about. I think it could also actually be included in the previous section of the topic above that, which is council events, because as we know, temporary provisions available for concerts or particular events and that. So I think it's just important that we do consider it when we can. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, just to clarify, you said you're seconded to note it's to approve rather than to note. It's just make sure that that's understood. Okay, we're dealing with the obviously the quality action plan. I now have another speaker, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's having a robust equality provision like this is very important for the council. And I know it's obviously part of our legislative obligations that we would have such a thing, an equality action plan, and review it and so on. One of the problems, I think, is that these are based upon the application of Section 75 categories, which is not a problem insofar as what they are, but what they do not include. And it's always been a very obvious exclusion that Section 75 does not include social class. It doesn't include any reference to working class people being disadvantaged structurally within capitalist society, and that's by design, of course. I'm wondering whether it is possible that we can, as well as including this standard Section 75 categories, which are a legal obligation, whether we can raise the bar above that, above the standard that is legally required, and to consider the impact of our decision making on working class people and other classes, social classes in our society, because they are not included in Section 75, and I'd like to see that considered if possible. So it's a suggestion. I'd like to see maybe some consideration of it, perhaps before it would come back, but I'd like to propose that. Thank you, Chair.
I'll ask Celine to come in on that point.
Chair, if I could just clarify, the original equality, updated equality scheme and action plans were presented to members in December of last year. And at that point, members agreed the public consultation process that has now been completed. And this is the feedback from that process and the finalisation of the plans that have already been agreed. subject to the comments that are made there in the consultation report. I am mindful, because I do prepare reports for council, that we have added the rural implications. We consider the Section 75 implications. That's at the end of every report, and indeed I do try to encourage officers generally to give these areas very serious considerations. We have also included sustainable development implications, which to some degree may capture some of the social aspects that the councillor's referring to. But we do work to try and take on board good and best practice in all of these areas. So we can certainly give it some consideration, but I would highlight that to add and to revisit these reports significantly at this stage would undermine the previous consideration that has been given to them.
Okay, next speaker is Councillor Maguire.
I just want to add my tuppence worth to the point that Councillor O'Coffey made, and I personally would object to the term working class being used. Working people and everyone being treated as equal is the way that I was educated and brought up, and to harp back to a bygone age when there was working class, middle class and upper class, it may be funny to see on a sketch on TV from many years ago, as I remember, but it's certainly not a term I would use to refer to ordinary, decent working people. I think to include the word class is harping back to a rhetoric that I thought was long gone in the 60s. So I personally would object to working class being used as a term in the chamber.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maguire. It's been proposed with regard to future consultations, not the one that has been agreed to that we have in front of us. So I'm taking the proposer and the seconder to this, and we have full agreement. Councillor Chris McCaffrey, before we go to the vote then.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come in very quickly, and again, I would just concur with my council and party colleague, Cllr McGear. I'm reminded of an old Irish proverb, Neil Husel na Hisalok Huishal, he shall. There's no upper class or lower class, just up a while, down a while. So I think there's a fascination here with grouping people into classes, and I think that's a very poor policy. But thank you.
We're not going to continue on this, and we're dealing with this draft equality action plan that's before us, and I'm not having more attention drawn to this further proposal by Councillor O'Coffey. So is there anybody in disagreement with the draft equality action plan as it stands? Could everybody take their hands down first of all? Right. Chris McCaff, okay, that's fine. If anybody is in disagreement, can they please raise their hand now or indicate? Okay, so that has been agreed and is passed. Perhaps those comments which were made by the proposer, whatever, can take place in future consultations. Now I'm going to move on to the second part of that, which is the draft disability action plan, and the other two, which is the disability advisory group. That's the minutes, two separate sets of minutes, which I think is Appendix 5 and 6. So I'll bring Louise in again to go through the draft disability action plan.
Thank you, Chair. So Appendix 4 is the draft disability action plan. This was presented, as with the equality action plan, this was presented to committee in December, and it went out to consultation for 12 weeks, and there were 14 responses. A summary of responses is provided at Appendix 2. Again, the comments broadly reinforced our plan and the plans, and the in particular focused on the importance of staff training for members and staff, and also for officers to identify opportunities for funding for better signage, and approval is sought for the plan.
Okay, because there's minutes of meetings from the Disability Advisory Group, I'm going to bring in Councillor Warrington as chair of that group.
Okay, thank you for that, Chair. Yes, certainly would be very supportive, obviously, of the work that has went into this, and would say thank you to Louise for all that work. And I certainly, with both aspects, the plan and the minutes of the DAG, I would like to propose both. Thank you.
Okay, so you're proposing the policy as it is, but you're proposing ratification of the minutes of both meetings. That's the 25th of January and the 30th of March.
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you very much again, Chair, and can I thank Louise and the team for bringing this forward. I'm happy enough to second as seconder to Councillor Warrington as a member of the Disability Advisory Group also. Happy to second. Thank you.
So you're second the draft Disability Action Plan, and you're also seconding the ratification of the minutes of both those.
That's correct, Chair.
Meetings. That's lovely. Thank you. Members, we've heard it proposed and seconded that we accept the policy and that the minutes are ratified. Anybody have any objection to that? Please notify now. Okay, no objectors, so that is passed. Thank you. We move on now to item 5.3 to consider a report on procurement and tenders update, and that is paper C. I'll ask Celine to come in on that, please.
Thank you, Chair. In this month's procurement report, we have a number of items for your approval and then some items for information. There are 3 tenders that are highlighted for approval, and that is because they exceed the pre-tender estimate that has been previously agreed by Council. They're detailed at section 2.1 of the report, and I want to advise that the work that has been done in connection with these, we have sought independent review and advice on the tendered prices, given that they exceeded the pre-tender estimate. In some instances, the pre-tender estimate, and I note in particular the improvements to Campsie Footbridge, the pre-tender estimate is slightly out of date in that it was prepared in mid-2021, so you are almost 10 months later. But as I say, we have sought professional advice, which does confirm that these prices are in line with the current market environment. In particular, some of these projects include elements of steel, which does seem to be one of the issues where there has been a considerable price increase. And we've also sought advice whether it would be beneficial either to delay or retender. And in both instances, we've been advised, or in all of these instances, that that there is not likely to be any reduction in the prices of the raw materials that are involved in these contracts, or indeed the labour costs that are related. So I present those to members for consideration and hopefully your approval. Sorry, there's a 4th one there, which is in connection with the vehicle as well. In addition, for approval is that we will issue a tender for internal audit services, and also that 4 tenders for annual supplies and services will be extended as set out at 2.3. In addition, in this report then, there's matters arising, and that relates to 6 tenders which have been awarded under delegated authority, and also then some information on the current issues and arrangements for supply of the Council's electricity, which are ongoing and subject to review. So all of those recommendations then, Chair, are set out at section 9, seeking approval and then noting the further information.
Okay, thanks, Celine. The first one that notified was Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and can I thank Celine actually for engaging with us earlier whenever we did have some questions around the variation, I suppose, from the pre-tender estimate, particularly around the Campsie Footbridge improvement project. And I suppose it is just a sign of the turbulent times we face that we do see a significant cost, particularly in terms of materials. But this will be a very worthwhile investment, particularly just in terms of that Campsie Footbridge project. So on the basis of that, I'm more than happy to lend my proposal in support for the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
You, Chair, and I'm happy to second the recommendations, but I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Play Park strategy team for doing such an excellent job rolling out the tenders and the works to improve so many play parks across the district, and I look forward to that being rolled out over the coming years. So thank you.
Okay, I think your comments should be noted there. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I noted the appreciation in some of the tenders. I also note one actually come in below the estimate. My question really is around, there's a number towards the end where either the pre-tender estimate is not included and or the actual cost of the tender is not included. For example, the anaerobic digestion, there's no cost associated with that. What did that come out at? It's not a huge issue we raise here tonight, but if maybe you could get a summary of those sent through. The other thing I would think would be very useful in this is where these are grant aid funded by, I think in the past we've had notes that a certain proportion of the overall budget for these has been provided externally. I always I like to compare that with the way the pricing works, just to maintain my own oversight of things. So if that could be included, thank you, Chair.
Okay, before I bring you in, Selena, Councillor Cllr, have you any questions? And then I'll ask Selena to summarise those.
Yes, Chair. Obviously, the difference in prices has been raised and spoken on there, so I'll not go over that again. But 2.2 and tenders to be issued, there's a note there that internal audit services, and there's an anticipated cost in the region of £50,000 over 3 years. Now, I'm not sure how much internal audit services actually cost, but that seems like a rather large figure there. So obviously it's over the coming 3 years, and again, maybe at a future meeting we could get some further detail brought back to us in relation to the figure stated there. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, and then one last questionnaire here from Councillor Bert Wilson.
Yes, Chair, I was going to second the noting of that by Councillor Donnelly. At this minute in time, yes, steel, concrete, and all those that we had tendered for there's been a serious rise in the price of that material, and I think it'll be very difficult at this time to go back out and retender and better it by anything. So I would be happy enough to agree with the to go ahead with the present tenders. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Selena, I'll bring you in now. I think that's all the speakers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So firstly, in relation to further cost information, as some of that information is identified by tenders as being commercially sensitive, this issue was discussed previously at Council, and the agreed position was that the reporting protocol was that all cost information would be available to councillors, and it is uploaded on a monthly basis to a folder within decision time. So there is further cost information available there. In terms of the overall quantum, sometimes it is difficult to put an exact figure on it because if, for example, it would be affected by the tonnages involved, but usually there's a fair, good amount of information there. And in relation to that particular one on anaerobic digestion, I know that we were satisfied with the outcome, and it's one waste disposal area where we believe that we have been able to generate a good price, which will make some savings, because I took a particular interest in that one myself as well. We do try to provide grant funding information as well. A number of these particular projects are being funded by the council. I'm not sure about the Campsie Footbridge. I know that there was some Department for Community funding for that project in the round, but I can certainly clarify that. In relation to the internal audit, the Councillor McAleer had inquired about. Well, I suppose, first of all, I would explain that is our internal audit is a hybrid arrangement where we do quite a considerable amount of that work internally. We have an internal auditor employed, but it is important both from an independence point of view and also from peer review and keeping up to date with standards that is supported by some level of external support. So that broadly breaks down into about 13,000 per year, plus then a contingency for any other investigation reports that may be required. And there generally each year is something that requires an external view upon, or indeed some specialist training that we need. So if we compare that to the cost that we pay, for example, to the audit office, which is in the region of 50 to 60,000 per year, it's actually quite well. I think we've looked at it and consider it to be a fairly efficient way of delivering that service. Say the hybrid model, where we have some in-house support, but then to ensure that there is support and independence, that is backed up by some external support as well. So I hope that provides the clarity on those queries, Chair.
I think it does. Okay, Celine. Right, members, let's get back to our proposal. Proposal from Councillor Stephen Donnelly and seconded by Anne-Marie Donnelly, that we accept the recommendations outlined at 9, that's in 9.1 and 9.2. And anybody in disagreement? I'm seeing Councillor Green. Do you wish to come in and speak, Councillor Green?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just a query I had. I didn't think you were going to go to the proposal that quick, but it's on 3.1.5. Could Celine just explain that tender? Does that mean that both applicants were awarded a tender, awarded tenders in various places? Is that what that means? And just then on one other thing, the play park strategy, is there a list of play parks that's actually been done in a year? Or would that be possible? Or maybe this is not the right place to ask that, but could we be provided with a list of what's actually been done in a year? So that's it, Chair.
That's fine, Seamus. I think if you put a letter to the Director of Environmental Services, that can be provided at the next Environmental Services meeting, if that's okay. And Celine, do you wish to ask onto the other point?
Yes. Yes, Chair. So where it says various, that means that there's various lots. In our tendering, we say that we can select all or some lots, and inevitably one supplier may be cheaper on one item, another supplier may be cheaper on a different item. Again, that information is all provided to members and is available in the monthly confidential procurement information that is uploaded to the file on decision time. And because I have a good memory, I can actually help on the second issue, and I can refer the member to a report that was presented to Environmental Services in, I think, May 2021, which was the Play Park Plan, which set out the proposals for year 1, year 2 and year 3. So we're now at May 2022, so I'd envisage that sometime over the next number of months that there would be perhaps an update on that. But I also know that from the discussion that there was a suggestion that there would be a workshop with members to deal with that update, so that all of the detailed issues could be dealt with in that context, and then an update brought to on the play parks. So hopefully the members should be able to access that at the Environmental Services of May 2021.
Okay, Councillor Green, are you satisfied?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll go back to our recommendations and the proposal from Councillor Stephen Donnelly, seconded by Anne-Marie Donnelly, that we accept the recommendations as they are in 9.1, 9.2. Anybody in disagreement, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 5.4, to consider a report of the Director of Corporate Services and Government's Paper D. And again, Celine.
Chair and members, the Director's report has 2 items for decision making and then information on the updates of Council and Committee actions, this Committee Policy and Resources for February to April 2022. The first item is seeking your support to participate in hopefully the development of a carbon offset fund, which is explained there at 2.1. The second one is seeking support for continued membership of the APSI Energy grouping organisation, and that is particularly relevant to the work that the Council is developing in climate change and sustainable development, with the particular focus on energy, which is a key issue. So those are the 2 items for approval with costs as detailed in the report. And then item 3 highlights the actions from these reports, and whilst there is a number of those in progress and a couple of those outstanding, I would attribute that to the recent PERDA period where we've had to hold on a few items, but I would anticipate that they will be progressed again soon. So the recommendations are for approval of participation in the development of a carbon offset fund with a contribution to that work of 2,200, and that's been led by Belfast City Council, and then payment of the membership fee for the 22-23 year in the amount of 2280, and then noting the action updates as detailed.
Okay, thank you, Celine. First, Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and again, thanks to Celine and the team for the report. I'm happy to propose the recommendations as listed, including the approvals and for the noting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Next person in is Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just running through the report here in relation to the APSI Energy subscription. It states that we get access to a range of policies and papers and that we can get invites to meetings. I'm wondering if those meetings or training sessions, do we have to pay an additional?
Sorry, I'm not sure it's my hearing, but could you?
Sorry, Chair, no problem. Yeah, I can move closer here. So it notes that as part of the membership of APSI, we get access to policies and papers on energy management, and that we also get invitations to training and a range of events. I'm wondering, are those events covered by the membership, or is that at an additional charge? Because I'm not sure, or I'd like to be better informed as to the benefits of being part of this sub-energy group. Secondly, I'm going to have to dissent in terms of the carbon offset fund. To me, carbon offsetting and carbon credit is complete greenwashing. It's really just a license to keep on polluting. It's putting the onus somewhere else, and it's something that I can't lend any credit to. Unfortunately, there's a reason why there were protests at the COP26 conference. Offsetting incentivizes the commodification of nature and allows powerful corporations to take over lands of vulnerable communities and risking human rights abuses. Obviously, we're looking at stuff that we're going to be doing more locally, but these offset schemes often exclude local and Indigenous people from land management practices, and carbon offsets put a price on nature which we cannot allow. The richest nations and corporations commodify nature and buy lands off poorer countries for offsets. It's really a dangerous and slippery slope that we're going down. And I think on top of that, the damage it enables offsetting also distracts us from much needed climate change. It gives the false impression that there's a way out of the crisis without everyone, every government agency, every business, everyone cutting their own emissions, which leads to delaying or watering down of the ambition to do the real work. I have a feeling that I'm probably going to be in the minority here, but 2.1.4 states some of the sectors that we're going to be looking at should we proceed. If it is voted through, I would encourage members to include toxic industries like gold mining, like fracking, factory farm and pig farming, chicken and pig farming has to be included, and also wind farms, because of the damage that they do to peatlands and the risk of peat slippage that we've seen quite locally. But I'll not be supporting this one. We can't afford it. We're far enough behind as it is, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I'll ask Celine to come in just on the APSI side of things there for a wee bit of clarity.
Chair, well, I mean, I know, for example, internally we have, well, a number of working groups who of officers where we are working to develop projects around energy initiatives, be they energy efficiencies, and also looking to develop around renewable energies. And in that instance, APSI Energy would be our first port of call for expert advice. They've provided that expert advice to us through and have attended a number of those events, and indeed we have a presentation to our senior management team around what energy initiatives would be appropriate to council buildings and estates existing, and also what opportunities, and we've identified a couple of opportunities that there may be for further renewable energy source development for the council itself. So it's that type of active engagement that we are getting at no additional cost. From time to time, we may ask for a specific piece of research to be done, in which case there may be some additional cost, but that again is normally taken through to council and approval sought for something if there was something additional. And I know, for example, one that we would be looking at an example of that would be the suggestion that there could be potential for a solar farm at the former landfill site in Tullyvar. But that would be a joint project, obviously, with the council in Mid-Ulster. But it's something that is really just an idea at this stage, and that has come through the APSI Energy engagement, and that's something that we might go back and then seek them to do some further, more detailed work on. So it's that professional advice and sounding board for, and as I say, it's relevant particularly at this stage where we are in our development on that energy journey. I suppose just to address some of the issues that the member raises, and I appreciate his position and you know that he is. However, we do know that our district, which is heavily reliant on the agriculture sector, does need to look in the wider sense at the opportunities that are offered by climate change as well. And I would also highlight that it has been a good practice for this council to seek alternative and external funding sources, because that does minimise the cost to the ratepayer of things that we want to do, and the carbon offset fund, if it was developed, would go some way to addressing both of those issues in the future.
Okay, thank you, Celine. Clarity has been provided on APSI. You're happy enough with that clarity? Yep, okay, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. And it's really just a question for Celine in relation to the APSI subscription. And note that we've been using or been a member of that since 2020. And I note with other subscriptions in the past, we've maybe agreed that we would approve that subscription maybe for a 3-year period, something that doesn't have to come back annually. Would that be something that we could consider for this, maybe to recommend a 3-year approval for membership of APSI? Unless, does the figure vary much each year?
Through the chair, the figure hasn't varied. I think it's been held very much the same. I actually did consider that in the context of this report, but thought that it was something that I would want to review on a year-by-year basis. But equally, 2 years is not a long time in terms of development. So if approval was, if members were minded to give approval for 2 years, we would be quite satisfied that that relationship would be beneficial over that period of time.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to propose that. Thank you.
Hey, sorry, Anne-Marie, are you seconding the recommendations or not? You are. Let's start here. That's fine. Hey, there's something strange happening here. I see where Celine McCartan's looking into the meeting.
Apologies, just wanted.
I'm not sure what's happening, but she's well and truly here. With regard to, we have the next speaker is Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like Councillor McAleer, I would have to declare outright opposition to the notion of carbon offsetting and any profit making. I note the use of the terminology climate finance. That's capitalism to the core. They're going to make money out of the destruction of the environment and our planet, and we're going to be playing a part in that, and I don't think it's right. Greenpeace says the biggest problem with carbon offsetting is it doesn't work. It doesn't encourage any reduction. It just basically you pay to assuage your conscience, or else you assuage market opprobrium for pollution. And we should not be in any way involved in facilitating continued destruction of the environment. We're going to preside over something that our following generations are going to have to live with, and we're going to be part of that, even if it's a small part. We should have no part to play with it. I would strongly oppose any involvement in carbon offsetting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Curry.
Yes, Gormaga Carley. Yeah, well, I take a contrary view, and I actually welcome that there is, albeit anecdotal, evidence that there is an appetite amongst companies here to offset emissions via local projects. And I think just if members think about this without the platitudes there, we do, one of our biggest industries here is farming, and when we were developing and actually feeding into the climate change bill and developing our own policy, one of the things we were saying was that many of our small family farms here are probably carbon neutral. There are mechanisms that can be carried out to actually quantify that properly. That's not taking place at present. Carbon neutral, and actually, if you look at a lot of our hill farmers are probably sequestering carbon. And one of the things that we were putting into our submissions from this council, agreed by this council, was that there would be some supports put in place where maybe some of those farming activities such as peatland restoration or management, things like that, where carbon is actively being sequestered, that there would be compensated for that. And this may be a way what's being proposed to just look at this, to explore this idea. I think that ties in there, Chair. So I think the recommendations have been proposed, and for that reason, I will second them, Chair. Gormaga.
Well, I have them seconded, but you're supporting Siobhan.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have two more speakers, Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Gormaga Carley, and just on the issue of the carbon, I would have difficulty with it also, and I wouldn't find myself knowledgeable enough to come to strong conclusions. But I do appreciate concerns of other councillors. But similar to the issue last night, I do believe that we as councillors have to manage a lot of these issues going forward, and there may be some unpleasant decisions we have to make. But again, I'd like to be fully informed. And on that basis, given that we are agreeing a subscription to APSE, I wonder would it be in place to directly ask APSE in relation to our carbon offset fund, what is their conclusions on the issue, and could that be brought back to ourselves for information? Chair.
Okay, thank you. Tommy, and I'm going to ask the last speaker on this topic, Councillor Sean Clark, before I bring Salita in again.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, for using this mic because this in here doesn't seem to be working. It's just more of I'm a member of Cllr committee, so I'm just wondering, is there any declarations of interest needed or not? I'm quite happy to go with it, but the other councillors are proposing.
I don't believe so, Sean.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sean. And I'll come back to Celine now to answer the question there posed by Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, certainly that's something we could get some further advice on. And I would highlight that the work in relation to the carbon offset fund is purely research at this stage as well. So there's no formal decision to develop or offer that at this point. It doesn't exist in Northern Ireland, so it's at a very much an early stage as well.
Okay, members, that's all on this. So we'll go back to the proposals. A proposal to accept the recommendations from Councillor Thompson, as proposed by Councillor Thompson, and second by Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly. Anybody other than Councillor McAleer or Councillor O'Coffey. If you disagree with that, please indicate. Okay, it's the only two dissenters are Councillor McAleer and Councillor O'Coffey. It's otherwise passed. Thank you. Next item. Sorry, I can't answer. Anne-Marie Donnelly, sorry.
Sorry, Howard, just in relation to that, obviously recommendation 9.11 is for 1 year's subscription to apps. I remember I had proposed that maybe we would increase that to 2 years. Is that okay?
Councillor Thompson has
Happy with
agreed
that?
there. Okay, members, it's just to sort of clarify that. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly had proposed that it was a 2-year subscription, and Councillor Thompson is in full agreement. So anybody in disagreement with that, just for clarity? Obviously, Councillor McAleer and is the only dissenter from that. So that will be noted. Thank you. The next item is these are reports for information, and item 6.1 to note report on staff matters, and that is paper E. Again, Celine. Sorry, Thelma. Thelma, could you come in with this, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Chair, there are 3 items for information in this report. The first item is the sickness absence statistics for 21-22. And within that, you'll find details. We have of note, I suppose this particular year has been one of the highest levels of sickness absence that we've had really in the past 5 years of the council. And one of the biggest attributing factors to that has been an increase in the sickness related to infections. And I suppose particularly, Chair, has been infection around COVID-19. And, we have detailed for you there the breakdown of the number of days that were lost due to COVID-19 absences. And if you exclude those from the overall figures, it would have reduced the rate down to an absence rate of 4.45, so it's about 0.5% lower, and the days lost rate down to below 12 days lost. So, I mean, that is something that we have noticed of this year, obviously, with COVID-19 and another increase in a lot of flus and colds. The other big contributing factor to absence continues to be absence related to mental health. It continues to be our highest cause of sickness absence, although in last year, the actual overall percentage in terms of the percentage of sickness absence was fairly significantly lower than the previous year. So, I mean, we are committed as an organisation to the Equality Commission Mental Health Charter, and we do continuously roll out a number of initiatives through our Health and Wellbeing Group to help support employees who are suffering from mental health illnesses. Moving on in the report, Chair, you will see the annual invoice then for the National Workforce and Local Government Association Representation Services. Just a Chair of note, there's actually a typo there in the invoice. That should be 3,579 rather than 379. So if that could be noted, please, in the minutes of that typo. It's still slightly lower than we paid last year for that, and that has been approved previously on a rolling basis, so that is just reported for noting. And then the final item, Chair, for noting is the consultation feedback. The Local Government Staff Commission undertook an exercise consulting with the 11 councils in Northern Ireland in relation to a regional negotiating and consultation framework for councils, and the feedback on that has been included in Appendix 1. So this council, Chair, did in April 2018 endorse this approach, and we engaged with the Labour Relations Agency at that time. However, unfortunately, progress was stalled just in relation to a trade union side issue in terms of joint approach. Excuse me, from the trade union side. It looks as if now from the most recent engagement that trade unions are now interested in participating. So, Chair, it's just to note that this was previously approved within this council and that we would like to re-engage then with the Labour Relations Agency in that matter. So the recommendations, Chair, are to note the update on sickness absence for 21-22, the payment to NILGA in respect of the National Workforce and LGA Representation Services annual invoice, and the consultation feedback on the Regional Negotiating and Consultation Forum, and reaffirm the Council's previous decision to grant officer approval to engage in further discussions.
Okay, thank you, Thelma. Just by the way, is this the one, Councillor Coffey, you declared an interest in? Is this the one or not? With the trade unions? Perhaps you could leave with you being in the chamber, please, just a short time. Members, you've heard Thelma outlining the report and the three recommendations. Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair, yeah, and thanks, Selma, for the report. Again, interesting reading, looking through it. It is interesting to hear that the sickness levels are, I suppose, disproportionately, or they seem to affect more the employees that were predominantly public facing, and as noted in the report, have no option or to work flexibly or work from home during periods of mild illness or ill health. And I suppose it is worth noting that they are predominantly the same workers who have been out on strike in recent times. I think in terms of the 2.3 in the Regional Negotiating and Consultation Forum, it does sound a promising develop, and I am encouraged by again what I've read and what I've heard here tonight. So I'm happy enough to propose a note and indeed propose that council officers do meet with the trade unions to proactively and positively engage and participate in the discussions as noted within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so you're proposing the noting. Thank you, Emmett. Councillor McGuire.
Gurmagat, and Carly, I'm happy to second the proposal. And I do note that the decision made in April 2018 by the previous mandate has finally been sorted out on the trade union side. Gurmagat.
Okay, thank you. Nobody else to speak, so you've heard it proposed and seconded that we note this report. Any objectors? Okay, passed. Could we call Councillor Coffey back in, please? Okay, members, that's Councillor Coffey back in the chamber again. We now move on to item 7 is correspondence. And Celine, I understand that there's one item of correspondence that hasn't been dealt with, is 7.1.
Yes, Chair, we've dealt with 7.2 under matters arising. So 7.1 then is a letter from the Western Health and Social Care Trust in response to our correspondence, ongoing correspondence about access to GP services. It is a more detailed response, well, that it does seek to address some of the issues that we've raised, albeit that we know that this is an ongoing area of concern.
Okay.
So it is for noting.
For noting. Members, I'm looking for a proposer to note and seconder. Councillor Thompson, are you looking to propose noting?
Propose the note, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Yes, Gurmagat Carly, propose a second. Just one question. I believe just there's an offer there, which I had raised previously, just around engaging with ourselves, the trust engaging with ourselves around the accommodation. I understand it might have been raised in the meeting, the recent meeting, but can I just have confirmation of that? And if not, they're just looking for contact details for liaison within the council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Curry. Unfortunately, I don't think either of the two of us can.
No, Chair, if Councillor Curry is content to leave that, and certainly confirm the details with the Chief Executive and whether that's officer contact or how we best progress, but we will revert on that.
Okay, Siobhan.
Yes, thank you. Well, as Chair, if it wasn't raised or addressed in that meeting, Chair, could I just ask that it is, since we as a council had asked for it? Gormagat.
Councillor Thompson, are you quite happy to include that in your original proposal? Okay, so we have that proposed and seconded. The next speaker on this is Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there seems to be some ongoing work in regard to facilitating the MDTs from this response, and I think that's worth certainly keeping an eye on, and I'm happy with what's been proposed there. But related to this is the ongoing pressure that is on our out-of-hours GP services, and I'd just like to quickly raise a proposal that we write to the Health and Social Care Board in regard to the out-of-hours provision. My understanding is that over the Easter weekend, which is a 3-day weekend, there was no cover at all in the whole of Enniskillen or in Omagh. And as a result, anyone on the phone was diverted to the accident emergency or else the urgent care in Omagh, creating huge, 84 people were in A&E at one point in time. And that situation has repeated itself over recent days. I'm also hearing huge sums of money are being expended to maintain this service at this stage as well. So if we could write to the, I take it's the board, still, it's hard to know who it is, maybe the trust actually, the Health and Social Care Trust, I think it should be, to request information on what they are doing to address the crisis in out-of-hours provision of GP services. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coffey. I'm going to go to the proposal and seconder first of all to the noting and the inclusion with that to Siobhan. If there's anybody in disagreement with that, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. With regard to Councillor Coffey's additional recommendation, I had Councillor McAleer in first there before I raised my hand, so I'll come back to Councillor Maguire just directly after. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm happy enough to second that proposal from Councillor O'Coffey. I had reason to be down in the SWA at the weekend because, again, as Councillor O'Coffey stated and others have stated previously, there was no access to an out-of-hours GP on Sunday of this week, either in Omagh or Enniskillen. I think that for the two county towns of Tyrone and Fermanagh is something that is completely unacceptable and something that we have to be fighting hard to oppose. I'm wondering if it's maybe an amendment that the Councillor O'Coffey would include is the name that's mentioned in the letter that's been sent out to us and copied in is a Roger Kennedy who works for the DOH, the Strategic Planning and Performance Committee, and whether it would be worth our while copying them in because one of the concluding paragraphs actually says that they deal or they manage both the in-hours GP provision and also the contract with Western Urgent Care. So it might be something to consider that we actually include him. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, before I go to a vote on that, I have two other speakers, and Councillor Maguire, do you wish to speak? Okay. Councillor Robert Irvine.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I heard it's probably for information for Donal and Emmett. The Health and Social Care Board has collapsed back into the Department of Health, and the person that you're referring to, Emmett, in the SPPG, essentially the majority of the members of the board have sort of morphed back into the SPPG, and they would look after commissioning and other sections. So rather than addressing it to the department, I would address it specifically to the SPPG, and they will deal with anything with regard to commissioning from now on. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Hart.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine. Emmett, I take it you're quite happy with that switch and coffee. Sorry. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, I'm happy with both those amendments, and I was aware, it's just mentioned the board that the board is no longer in existence, but this is the problem. We don't even know who.
Okay,
so I'm happy with if that's
hopefully
accurate.
Councillor Irvine's clarified it there, and I'm going to put that we've had it proposed and seconded that we write to this group. Any dissenters from that? Okay, that's passed as well. Okay, members, we're on now to, I take there's no further correspondence, Celine? No? No, we dealt with the other. So we're on to item 8, any urgent and relevant business. And I have one notification prior to the meeting, and that's from Councillor Cllr.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for accommodating this request. I had hoped to get it raised last night, but unfortunately there wasn't time. It's a request to eliminate the council buildings this coming Sunday, the 15th of May, for Nakba Day, which is the day to remember the catastrophe or the expulsion of the Palestinian people from their land when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were actually driven from their homes. Civilians were massacred and hundreds of villages were deliberately destroyed, and we're now coming up to the 74th anniversary of that. People will be well aware of what's happening in Palestine and in Israel at present. This morning, Israeli Defense Forces actually shot and murdered a journalist, and I think the council recently lit up council buildings in solidarity with the people of Ukraine and the plight that they are currently under. And this is something that's been going on, as I say now, for 74 years. I think it's something that council has a moral obligation to acknowledge and to take a stand for. And we're working on a few bits behind the scenes, and we have expressed solidarity as a council before with the Palestinian people and all they're going through. So I'd just like to make a proposal that we eliminate the council buildings to recognise this very significant date. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cllr. And the next speaker we have is Councillor Bert Wilson.
Chair, yes, I had my hand up for to come on to the previous one to do with the hospital, so it must have been missed. But I would not. I think that we could be putting our hands up for a lot of. If we follow Councillor Cllr's proposal, we could be putting our hands up for a lot of countries around the world at this minute in time. And I just wouldn't. Maybe I would not be in agreement with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarity, I've checked our protocol and that there's nothing against this proposal within another other business for this proposal. So next go to Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Thank you, Chair Gormagat. Just Chair, sorry to check. You may have received notification from myself about an AOB item just before the meeting, and I hope if you can see that, just that you permit that as well. But I'm just happy to second Councillor Cllr's proposal. You know, I think for many people living in that part of the world, the Nakba never ended, and we're all heartbroken to learn about the killing of the Palestinian American journalist today. Shireen Abdou Akla, and just I would send on behalf of the Sinn Féin group, I would send our deepest condolences to her family and friends, and we strongly condemn her killing. Free media and free press is something that needs to be protected all across the world. So just to make those comments, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so you're seconding the proposal.
Yes, that's correct.
That's fine. Okay, members, we've heard it proposed and seconded with the illumination of the buildings on Sunday. Is anybody in disagreement with that? I heard Councillor Wilson. Is there anybody else? Councillor McCaffrey, your hand's still up? Okay, apart from Councillor Wilson, there's no disagreement with that, so that is passed. Councillor McCaffrey, I'm not aware of anything you forwarded to me in any other business, and I did check my internet prior to commencing the meeting. Can you confirm what time it was sent at?
Yes, Chair, I'll just check. Now, apologies, it was sent at sent at 10 to 7. Appreciate it, short notice.
I'm sorry, I know nothing about it, and thereby I can't include it. I apologize, but there must be some earlier notification than 10 to 7, because I'm sitting without computer here or whatever, and the phone switches off when I'm prepared. So,
well, I can accept that, Chair. I wonder just I know it's in relation to illumination of council buildings as well. So I wonder under that pretense, since it's a relevant item, could I bring it in under that? It's in prospective illumination of council buildings.
I am sorry, but I think we've got to stay with this. I was notified earlier on from Councillor McAleer to bring in any urgent relevant business. I'm sorry, but this notifying chairs, I can only speak for myself, at the last minute when you are sat down in the chamber ready to kick off, the chair has no time to look at it or to check whatever it may be. So I'm sorry on this occasion I cannot
That's
do it.
that's no problem. Chair. I respect the decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer, you're looking back in, but I'm not going to let you carry on with any further business. Is there some problem?
Just a point of clarification, just another member raised me. The request was just to illuminate the building in red. Just I don't think I'd specified that whenever I was speaking. So
Oh,
just
sorry.
for
Sorry, you
clarification. Thanks,
specified it
Chair.
to me, but you didn't. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so we have now moved out of any urgent and relevant business, and we're going to have to go into committee at this stage. I have a proposer from Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly and a second. Donnelly. So IT, if we could get the recording back on, please. Wave your hand when it's back on, please. Right, members, we're back onto recording. I'll ask the director to summarise what took place in committee.
Thank you, Chair. In confidential business, members received a brief update on matters arising on confidential minutes of the 12th of April. They also received confidential staff report and a further update in relation to staffing issues.
Okay, can I have a proposer and seconder? Councillor Robinson and Councillor Thompson. All in agreement? That's passed. Members, it's come to, this is my last meeting in this mandate of the Policy and Resources Committee. I've welcomed the challenges along the way, and I hope I was fair to all. I appreciate your cooperation, all the councillors, and I'd like to mention in particular, obviously, Celine, the director, and Alison, the chief executive, to whom I work with regard to the papers for this committee. They both kept me right, hopefully, over the period. And I wish my successor, who's going to be selected next month, all the best in the future. And but thank you, because it's been challenging but enjoyable. Thank you very much.
All the best, Chair. Good night.
Well done, Chair.